Hey scholars, so we've been learning about beaks and how they help birds survive, and you're going to start using that information to write your own informative paragraph about beaks. But before you get started on that, I want to revisit about what an informative paragraph has and how we wrote ours about the feathers to help you understand how to do your paragraph on the beaks. So when we have our informative paragraph, we have different parts. So we have something called the focus statement, we have our detail sentences, and then our conclusion. And remember, the focus statement, so that's our first sentence, it tells the big idea of your piece of writing. So it lets the person know, the reader know, what you're going to be writing about. Then we have our detail sentences. So the detail sentences help the reader understand the focus statement. So when we're writing our details, it's giving more information about what we're talking about, our focus statement. And then when we have our conclusion, it wraps up your piece and reminds the reader of the big idea. And most of the times, your conclusion sentence is pretty close to how your focus statement was. So we did a paragraph together before. And who remembers, what was this paragraph about? Right, we wrote about how birds help feathers survive. So we're going to look at our paragraph part by part to go over each section to make sure you're ready to write yours about the beak. So again, our first sentence, when we're writing our paragraph, we have something called an indent. We do a little space so our reader knows where our paragraph starts. And our first one, I did it in different colors so we know the different parts. So we have our first sentence is in green and it says, birds' feathers help them to survive in many ways. So this first sentence is called our focus sentence, our focus statement. And it's letting the reader know that we're going to be writing about what? Right, about how feathers are helping the birds survive. So since that's what our focus statement is, then our details have to reflect that. Our details tell us about how the feathers help the bird survive. So we have our next sentence, which is in purple, says some birds have thick feathers. So that's part one of our first detail. It's telling us what the feathers look like. They're thick. But we need to explain now how those thick feathers help the bird survive. Because remember, we're talking about how feathers help the bird survive. And if we just say thick feathers, that doesn't tell us anything. So then our next sentence explains. It says, these feathers protect them like sunscreen. So this second sentence, this part, is helping explain our first part of our detail. It's giving us more information about how those thick feathers help the bird survive. So we had our focus statement, we had our detail. Now these two sentences went together. We talked about what the feathers looked like and then how they helped them. And now we have our next detail, which says other birds have colored feathers that match their habitat. So now we're going to be talking about the feathers that they use to match their habitat. And now, again, that didn't tell us how it helps the bird survive yet. So we need to add more information. We need to elaborate. So how they use those colored feathers, we wrote our next sentence. These feathers help the bird to hide. So the feathers that match their habitats, our second part again, tells us that those feathers that match their habitat help them hide because they don't want to be eaten. They don't want to be the prey of other animals. So they help them camouflage or hide into their surroundings. And now we're at our last sentence. And again, remember, our last sentence is called our conclusion, where it wraps up our piece and reminds the reader of the big idea. So what was our big idea again? What was our focus statement? Right, it's telling us that birds' feathers help them to survive in many ways. So we're talking again about how feathers help birds survive. So let's see what our conclusion says. Feathers protect the birds from the sun and predators. So we wrapped up, so we talked about how they protect them from the sun and they help them from the predators. So we put that together in one sentence to let the reader know that's what we were talking about. You did an awesome job. So when you're writing yours about the beak, I'm going to expect you to do the different parts of your paragraphs. And we're going to work one step at a time to get your paragraph together. All I need you to do then today is you're going to draw your picture of the heron. And since we're talking about the beaks, you need to draw the beak. The bird's missing the beak. And then tell me, what is the purpose of the beak for the heron? What does the heron use its beak for?